Good afternoon and welcome back to Real Estate Live UK. Our weeks are free to attend virtual events run 3 times a year in February, June and October. The programme is brought to you by White Label, our partners and sponsors, and we'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the organisations that have contributed to the exceptional lineup taking place this week. During the sessions this week, places from across the UK will be showcasing investment opportunities, and industry-leading experts from the public and private sectors will be discussing new ideas and topical issues relating to property. You can view the full programme of sessions taking place on our website, www.realestatelive.co.uk. Several of our panels and presentations will be linked to our key themes for the week: driving green investment, promoting healthy places, redefining town centres, and homegrown tourism and leisure. Right now, we're about to head to Kingston and look at the borough's model for future success, a session hosted in partnership with the Royal Borough of Kingston upon Thames, Kingston University, Kingston First and London Square. But just before we start, I'd like to remind you, the audience, please feel free to ask questions using Zoom's Q&A function. And now I'm pleased to hand over to our chair for this session, Claudette Forbes, Director of CAF Consulting. Over to you, Claudette.
Thanks very much, Callum. My name is Claudette Forbes. As Callum's just introduced me, I'll be your chair for this afternoon's panel. I'm not going to go on too much because actually I just want to get straight into the panelists to hear what they have to say, which I'm sure the audience is really excited about. And I'm going to kick off with Duncan Brown from RBK, Kingston Council. Duncan, here we are in this very difficult time. Kingston has actually established quite a reputation now, leading the way in economic recovery coming out of the pandemic. Can you tell us a bit more about the work of the council, what you've been doing? I think you're on mute, Duncan.
Apologies for that, Claudette. Thank you. Apologies. Yeah, thanks. That's very kind of you to say that, Claudette. I think we have been focusing hard on how we are addressing and mitigating the adverse impacts of the pandemic, certainly from an economic perspective. And yeah, you know what a year we've had, and it's still ongoing. I don't think we're exceptional in that respect. I think we have coordinated ourselves with the other 33 London boroughs and national government. But certainly we felt at the outset in the first wave last year that we needed a very specific local and partnership-led response. So during that time, the council convened an economic recovery task force and a communities recovery task force, which met together with key partners in the borough, both across the public and private sector and the third sector. Some of the names being the university here today, the BID and Kingston First, but also private sector partners who we host in the borough, like Unilever and Lidl, so big employers. And really it was to start to really focus on what we could do, particularly in our town centres, which we knew were suffering and were continuing to suffer. So our first sort of main task was to distribute an enormous amount of sort of government grant to our 9,000 businesses, many of which are micro businesses, to really just keep them alive. So really sort of a survive, adapt and thrive was our sort of mantra. But the early days was definitely about survival, and the energy and commitment we had from our partners was unbelievable, really. I mean, from the outset, you know, certainly in the council, we were doing all kinds of things we never envisaged we'd do in local government in our lifetimes, from sort of food distribution and all these kind of things. But what that did was convene the partnership in the locality. So when the economic task force came out, we were one step ahead, and then we could really start to focus on particularly unemployment and the rise of. Kingston had never experienced such a wave of unemployment before, and people going on to job seekers allowance, being made redundant overnight, the big retail sector in Kingston. So there was a real issue there where we had to sort of gear ourselves and build programs from scratch, really. But that was an opportunity as we saw it, and we could really bespoke that. And then over time, in terms of the Kingston Town Centre, we saw this as an opportunity of using our assets to leverage regeneration and recovery. We own approximately about 50% of the town centre, but across the borough, in fact. So as the task force has matured and our partnerships have got ever stronger with our key partners like Kingston First and the university, there was a real sort of drive to start to set down programmes of recovery around investment in the town centre, but also the council taking a view on its assets around how they could be regenerated and create that new future. Just alongside that, we were also embarking on a vision exercise, a strategy for 15 years for the town centre, and sort of overnight that had to become our recovery strategy. And we were working with Arup on that, who obviously do this all over the world, but it was very good to have them on board at that time because we could really hone that. And it started to become more of a 5-year strategy, actually, and everyone felt we need to get on with this stuff now. So from that point of view, that's accelerated our focus and our commitment to recovery, but also probably allowed for some of the projects which were sort of on the nice to-do list then became quite urgent and required to help particularly retail and numbers return back to the town centre when the unlocking took place, but also that acceleration of trends we saw with large format retail and how we could adjust and start to trial things which were new. So
now I think that Duncan has frozen. It's either him or it's my internet. So my panelists can nod to see that they can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Duncan, you froze there for a second. So.
Okay. Sorry.
I mean, if you like, because you started to come on to Kingston Town Centre, and we can move across to Kirsten, whose internet seems to be quite stable. So far, so good. Kirsten, tell us a little bit about, what that work has meant for you, what's working with the council on the very urgent need around the town centre and retail in Kingston.
Sure, thanks, Claudette. So we're the business improvement district that's set up to operate within Kingston Town Centre. We work with around 750 businesses and organisations in the town centre, and we've been in operation for just over 15 years now. So we've seen the town centre over a considerable period of change, and of course, as Duncan has said, what a year the past year or so has been for the town centre and across the sectors that operate in Kingston, actually. And I think we're already starting to see a different kind of relationship that people have with the town centre, particularly a relationship that they might have built a bit differently during lockdown, and perhaps we'll come on to that in a second. What are we seeing since the restrictions have started to ease this year? So thinking from April in particular, well, we're seeing actually that our footfall is coming back to Kingston, and we are benefiting from being an outer London town centre, and footfall for us is somewhere between 5 and 10% down on 2019, which is quite incredible if we think about the level of restrictions that we're still operating in, and we've not necessarily got our students back, we've not necessarily got office and commercial back. And we're certainly seeing more loyalty to the town centre. We're seeing people coming into the town and using it, and we're benefiting from that pent-up demand people are spending here. We've also seen during the lockdown businesses open here in Kingston, and notwithstanding there is a lot of structural change happening across retail in particular, but new retail businesses have set up in Kingston. Leisure and hospitality has set up in Kingston. And of course, we've had the most extraordinary news with Unilever choosing Kingston upon Thames to be its new European headquarters. And as Duncan said, and we might come on to during the session, that will help to catalyse, we think, a considerable amount of regeneration in the town centre, as well as bring in high skilled jobs and hopefully the halo effects of a blue chip company coming to Kingston. So we were re-elected for our fourth 5-year term in 2019, and that term started in 2020. And one of the key asks that our members put to us was they wanted to see a considerable improvement in the experience of Kingston Town Centre. We've got a wonderful market town set up. We've got brilliant blue and green infrastructure. We've got heritage and culture and cobbled streets and nooks and crannies. But there was a real ask that, in order for us to keep Kingston on the front foot and for us to make sure that we're providing people with the best experience that they can expect in Kingston, whether they're working here, visiting, or a resident popping in for a coffee and a catch-up, how can we best improve their experience? And prior to the pandemic, the council, the university, the GLA and Kingston First actually started a really quite significant piece of work called Reimagining Kingston Town Centre Streets and Spaces. And this was a collaborative project to look at how we could co-invest, co-curate and encourage others to be part of improving public spaces and streets in the town centre to start to, bit by bit, raise the quality of how people move around and experience the town centre. And following on from, thinking about how people are using green and open spaces, we've started a commission to look at 2 open spaces in the town centre. So getting into quite tactical but really significant parts of the town to say, how can we improve these green spaces? How can open spaces work better for our local community and our businesses? So we're looking at space on the riverside. We're looking at an important heritage space in the town centre. And we're also starting to look at how we can transform artery streets, so streets that have got coffee shops and office and commercial businesses. How can we start to green those? How can we make them more social? How can we start to soften some of those hard landscaped areas in the town centre to encourage people to be able to sit and enjoy and socialise without necessarily having to spend money in the town? So these are active and live projects that we're working on at the moment, but they were born out of that really important strategy that was started before the pandemic, where we were realising that Kingston was the place that was changing. We wanted to improve the experience of it, but we wanted to make sure that we could connect the best bits of it better. So that's our focus at the moment.
It sounds, from what you and Duncan have said, there's a lot going on. There's been some major things, the Unilever development, plus you've got your work cut out for you, basically. Thank God there's a really good partnership in Kingston. I know that, having had some experience working there. I'm going to move now on to Jen Edwards from the university, because you have a town centre presence as well. So, Jen, can you tell us a little bit how the university is also playing a role in all of this?
Absolutely. I think from Duncan and Kirsten have really set the scene on this, that a lot of the work that we've been doing was happening before the pandemic. And the university has always prided itself on having incredibly strong civic relationships, but also our presence in the town centre. We're one of the major employers in the borough. Our students and staff are very much there. Many of them live within the borough. We're very much a place-based institution, and that's something at the heart. And we've tried to continue that as much as we've been able to do through the pandemic. As I said, we're very immersed in the community, and since the pandemic, we've actually hosted a community testing site on campus. We did that in partnership with the Borough of Kingston, and that was a different approach to many universities who did it through the main government route, because we wanted to make sure that what we were doing was meeting local needs. That was incredibly important to us. And it enabled us not only to offer testing for our students and staff, but also to frontline workers, those who really needed it and needed that central location to come and get the testing done on actually quite often weekly basis. And we had some quite regular people coming in really when it was quite difficult times with the rates as they were. We've also run a vaccination centre in partnership with our local GP network. In our Penryn Road campus, that's our campus at the heart of the town centre. And that's really been, the take up there has been fantastic. We've given over 26,000 vaccinations now, and we welcome so many people onto campus who've never been before, from those who are in their 90s to those who have special needs, and all of them united in coming forward to come and have their vaccination. And it's been an incredible way of actually opening the university up in a way that hasn't been possible before, and has very much been prompted by the pandemic, but something we've been very keen to carry forward. I think to look for, we've also been, our nursing students have been working on the front line with the NHS. Our students have taken part in hackathons to help local businesses solve problems caused by the pandemic. And our staff and students have also given their time to support the community in terms of volunteering work throughout. I think what we've really taken away from the pandemic and what we're all looking to build on is really the strength of the community and partnerships. We've seen many of these partnerships strengthen as we responded to the challenges posed by the pandemic, and we've worked together on collective solutions that serve the wider community. Duncan's mentioned the work on the Economic Recovery Task Force, where our Vice-Chancellor sits, and that's something that we've been, and there's a number of work streams the university is contributing to, particularly around skills and sustainability. Our impact on the borough is obviously not just in terms of our students and staff, but also through our buildings. Townhouse is our new landmark building, which is on our Pennon Road campus, designed by Grafton Architects, who are many award-winning. And just as we opened our building, the pandemic hit. So what we've been doing is it's very much been designed to open up the doors to the local community. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to welcome the community in as we would have wished at this point in time due to the pandemic. But what we have done, as I've said, is we've run the vaccination centres and opened up our campuses in different ways. But our library within Townhouse has still been going through the majority of the pandemic, and that's been really important. So our students who come from a variety of different backgrounds, 50% are first in their family to go to university, and not all of them have access to the right study environment. So we've been able to offer the facilities for those who really need it throughout. And it really has been very much cementing Townhouse as the focal point on campus, and it's something that hopefully when we are able to open the doors up to the community, we can take forward. We've also got very strong relationships with our local school network, and we're deepening our relationship with the South Thames College Group. And working together, this has very much been formed through the Council's Economic Recovery Task Force about how we can work together to shape the local and regional skills base. We're also working very closely with business, and as Kirsten's mentioned, we're really excited that Unilever is coming to the town centre, and we are working closely with them to establish how we can create new opportunities to retain our diverse graduate talent within the borough. And there's a number of things in the pipeline that we're really excited about there. And I think it is just showing how the partnership approach and positioning the Kingston as a very attractive investment option is actually reaping the benefits now and incredibly. So we're really, really pleased to see that. The university is also recognised at a national level. We have a world-renowned art school, and also we're top in the country for entrepreneurs and startups. So, and we are sector leading for a number of our programmes on equality, diversity and inclusion. So we bring a lot of diverse and engaged students and staff into the borough, and I think we're very proud of our role in that. And as Kirsten's mentioned, we've been working on the reimagining Kingston Town Centre streets and spaces, which is very much utilising the creativity and design expertise of our students and staff. And we're now bringing forward particular projects surrounding that are really helping to bring new life into the town centre. We're seeing that in terms of funding to transform the vacant Undercroft space by John Lewis, and with public realm improvements to the riverside, the development of the Kingston Sculpture Trail, and we're also ensuring that we are very much trying to support local community groups on the ground who want to get projects going, and also our student body who want to do that too. And there's a number of things, as I've said, in the pipeline that are happening already. So it's a really, really exciting time to be in the borough. And I'll end on, we've had I think it's already been mentioned at Real Estate Live actually, but we our art school have been working and student union have been working on creating meanwhile space on Fife Road called Not My Beautiful House. That had funding from the GLA and RBK. We'll provide a new hub for local community, part exhibition, gallery, workshop and shop. And it's a really much an open house, a mix of artists and creatives and businesses to really open up to the public and breathe some life into the town centre and really make the best use of vacant spaces.
Wow. I mean, it's just incredible. That's an incredible kind of amount of good work that seems to be happening. Now, we'll have some more opportunities to probe what's been said already, but I want to now turn to Mark to tell us a bit about London Square. What is London Square, Mark?
Hi, good afternoon. So London Square actually was founded back in 2010, and we're a new private developer, sort of a London-centric developer. Because back in 2010, I guess when we founded it, we looked at the market and the number of other players in the market, and actually most people would only sort of say that they only recognise the sort of Berkeley Homes brand and maybe Borough. And actually, when you look at London as a whole, there was back in 2010 there was very few developers that were actually building sort of over 500 homes a year, or in the capital. So we got investment in 2010. We founded the company then. And we've been growing ever since. So we started with about 5 of us. There's now about over 150 of us. And in 2014, our original private equity funder was bought out by an American company called Ares, who are now our funders. And they were very much equally as ambitious as we are. And they're looking for us to deliver sort of 1,000 homes a year, which is actually, would put us in the sort of top 5 in the London market. So, We've built a lot, and I guess over the last 11 years, we've built the business by investing in different boroughs. And I guess I'm here today because obviously we've got now 3 projects in the Kingston Borough. And obviously we're also well known for building there's the Star and Garter at Richmond just down the road. I'm here because ultimately I was a local resident from 2000 to 2007. And I think that, to be honest with you, us private developers are a catalyst to a huge amount of further investment, bring a lot of new people into the town centre. And I've watched Kingston sort of evolve over the last 20 years, and obviously I think that's why we're quite excited as a business to do the same today. As a business, we also have London Square Partners, which is run by our colleague of mine called Darren Nathan, and we are looking to partner with local authorities on where they have land holdings, etc., and we can come along and hopefully unlock those jointly, maybe in 50-50 partnerships. We've just done our first one actually in another borough called Waltham Forest. We're doing a 50-50 on their land there for the redevelopment of Lea Bridge station sites. We also, obviously, we do the full journey at London Square. So we buy the land, we take the scheme through planning, we manage the construction and the build, we sell the private residential units. We also specialised in the commercial because we do an awful lot of mixed use nowadays. So we've done mixed use schemes in Islington, Lambeth and Southwark. And as I say, one of the schemes we're looking at, we're just about to go into public consultation in Kingston. Will be a mixed use scheme, quite a high profile scheme, right in the town centre. So a lot of the work that Kingston First are doing and Kingston First are doing, and sort of looking at what we can do to revitalise the riverside, etc., is something we're very much interested in getting involved in. We also have London Square Works, which is our especially sort of commercial side, so that we design the mixed use properly from day one. A lot of problems with a lot of residential developers don't always take the full product seriously. They're very good at residential, but they don't concentrate on the other parts of the development, the commercial side. And I guess what we've always done at London Square is we've taken great care on the design side from day one to ensure that the space that we build is fully marketable, fully lettable from day one, because nobody wants to see vacant space. And particularly in the current times where the retail is struggling and everything else, it's even more important than ever to get that design right. So we're quite proud of our track record on that. We're delivering mixed use schemes. We delivered a scheme in Streatham Hill where we revitalised Streatham, right in the middle of Streatham Hill. We actually put a Marks and Spencer's in there and revitalised the High Street. And with the 260 homes there, that completely revitalised that part of that borough. So we feel private investment is really where a big catalyst is to get the right places. And I guess finally, we've just introduced a Square Roots, which is our for-profit registered provider. So effectively a housing association set up as part of the business, backed by private investment funds. We got planning consent last year for our first scheme actually in Kingston Borough, or Kingston Riding School site. That's now on site, and we're delivering 100% affordable housing on that site now. So we've got a consent for a mix of affordable housing and private, and actually with our Square Roots RP, we can deliver that as 100% affordable. So we think as a business, having a commercial, an RP and a private sale, we can really offer London Borough of Kingston particularly, but other London boroughs, a really good quality suite of development.
A very unique setup that London Square has there, actually. I've not quite heard of a business that covers all of that. I just want to stay in the town centre, because we have a question from John Allen talking about the departure of Surrey County Council from the town, from the borough, and also the idea of looking at the Guildhall complex. So what does the panel feel that Kingston has in terms of a centre for civic activities and culture? Does any of the panel want to comment on that, given this kind of these shifts in terms of the civic part of the town centre? Does anyone want to comment? Duncan, you look like you're ready to go.
To comment, I can't sort of speak on behalf of my planning colleagues, but I think what we're seeing, I mean, town centres will always change, and particularly historic ones like Kingston, that 2,000 years old. It's probably one of the oldest town centres in London. So I think we have to accept change as inevitable. I think it is regrettable when you do see some of the what we call our anchor institutions leave the town. But they'll have their reasons. But what I do see in Kingston is often that's regenerated with a new and diverse offer, and I think that's what we discovered when we embarked on the visionary strategy, was that's to be encouraged. And what we did see was Unilever arrive, for example. But I think the diversification of the town centre is really important for its survival. And I think perhaps you could say, and I might be controversial here, is maybe we were too municipal and too heavily weighted in our civic presence. We have the courts, we have the magistrates, we have all of those institutions, and they are great and they coalesce as a hub. But perhaps we need a bit more diversification, and what came through the vision was we needed more people living in the town centre and using it, and that keeps its survival over the medium to long term. So and of course we would welcome back a Surrey to county council type occupier, because they provide jobs and employment and a whole range of other benefits for the town. So yeah, that was my attempt to answer that question or comment.
Any other panelists like to comment on that? So the evolving nature of the town centre, and from what everyone on the panel has said, there's a huge amount that's happening anyway, so that we see it literally evolving as circumstances change. And I think the message was that with the pandemic, it's kind of accelerated and in some ways facilitated a fresh look at things, which are now being brought forward. Mark, did you want to say something?
Sorry, yeah. I mean, I think that's the great. I mean, the one thing that the COVID has taught us all, particularly as developers, is that obviously if you can build homes where obviously on the doorstep is a great town centre such as Kingston, you're going to get people who want to come and move and live in that kind of location. People want to live local is a sort of term that you hear quite a bit more these days. And that's the great thing with Kingston. You have everything there on your doorstep. You have the amenities of the riverside. You have an amazing ancient marketplace. You have some of the best still got the best brands and some of the best retail offer available in southwest London. So, purely definitely from a direct investment point of view, I think there's a lot going for Kingston. I mean, I've always used Kingston as an example with other boroughs, another sort of neighbouring borough not too far away, where they have a similar town centre which we've developed in. And I've always used Kingston as the sort of example of what can happen with inward investment, particularly with more people moving and living in the town. It adds and revitalises the whole of the town centre. So I think, businesses will come and go and evolve. Finding places for people to live, they'll live there for many years, hopefully, and bring their own families up, etc.
And I think one of the features of this pandemic has been that obviously a lot of people are working from home. A lot of people have got used to working from home. So this whole thing about in the outer London boroughs like Kingston being a place for at or near home working. I just wonder whether the panel, anyone would like to offer a view on that, and should Kingston be proactively capitalising on that? Kirsten, can I put you on the spot?
Yeah, could you just clarify, Claudette? Is this could you just clarify the question there? Is this around
Mark was talking about residential, that organisations, businesses come and go, residents kind of tend to stick around for a much longer time. And I was just thinking of the pandemic with a lot of people having to work from home, and there's this idea of promoting the idea of at and near home working in the outer London boroughs like Kingston. So I'm sort of seeing an opportunity there.
Yeah, without a doubt, there is an opportunity for us to explore and to make the most of. And Mark has really eloquently explained that for a long time Kingston has had an enviable quality of life offer in its broadest sense, from our town and district centres, schools, the historical and cultural offer, access to green spaces, all of this stuff we know Kingston has got in spades. I think for us, thinking about the town centre in particular, and Duncan's touched on this, we need to think about the balance. So the balance of types of use in the town, and making sure that the pendulum doesn't swing very forcefully in any particular way, and that we make sure that we've got commensurate business and residential use for how we see the town and its future evolving. So with residential use, we need to be thinking about healthcare provision and leisure provision to go alongside that. And possibly something Duncan can comment on in terms of thinking about retaining an in-town leisure facility, for example. We shouldn't take that for granted. There are plenty of places that actually would try and put that outside of the town centre. And then thinking about as well how we use space. So it's an absolutely outstanding and incredible vote of confidence in a place like Kingston that Unilever would want to cement and bolster a presence it's already got, but bolster it really quite significantly. So how can we make sure that we're accommodating great jobs and great workspace for those folks that may be either living in the town centre or close to it, so that we're not just creating homes that then people go and continue to go and work elsewhere. They actually come and use the town centre and its facilities and feel that they do have that healthcare provision, those schools and further education facilities, and social infrastructure that makes a great place to live. I guess my point is, let's just make sure that the pendulum doesn't swing forcefully in any particular direction. But that comes back to vision, and making sure that vision is collaborative, and vision's about leadership, and leadership in place is about creating conditions that people can feel part of, curating and contributing to how a place evolves. And I think we're on that path in Kingston without a doubt. So very much welcome ideas for how we can make sure we get that balance right in Kingston.
Thank you very much for that, Kirsten. I'm going to turn to a question that's come from the floor. It starts with Kingston University, so on the alert there, Jen. So I'll read it out. As Kingston University is a leader in developing culture in the borough, and there are many potential cultural venues in Kingston, how can we apply to get help to bring community groups into the borough? They're saying that there's a lack of affordable space for community groups. They are all, like everyone else, potential spenders and visitors. Not all groups are registered charities, but important for sustaining people's well-being. So how can we take in those that are not part of the kind of established eco-structure or the ecosystem, community groups and affordable space? Jen, is this something that the university has wrestled with, or is this a new issue?
I think it's something that's always been an issue, and I think it's a really, really pertinent question actually at the moment, because it's we're creating all these the vision of for the town centre, and in reality, how is it going to work if you're a community group who needs affordable space, particularly around the cultural, creative sector, etc., where often they aren't able to be able to afford the sort of space that sometimes they would need. So I think certainly when we were pre-pandemic, the university did make its spaces available to community groups and when we weren't using it, or to try and utilise the space in a way that could be done for that. Townhouse has performance space. And the idea is that when that's open, community groups can come and use that space as well. So I think we certainly try to make our buildings as open as we possibly can. And I'm caveating that because obviously in the pandemic we haven't been able to do that because of the government guidance. But our aim is to do that again going forward. We're also one of the founders of the Rose Theatre in the Borough, so we work very closely with them. And I think it links to your previous question actually around when developers come to the town centre as well, and there is a new development coming. I mean, around Kirsten's point about balance as a community use, can you work with these local groups to try and see if we can create some sort of space for them? And I think those discussions definitely have to happen, and we would certainly want to be a part of that. And I think it's also around the shift to work patterns since the pandemic, with people actually increasingly either working from home or doing blended working, where they're a few days a week in the office, a few days a week from home. How can we give that collaborative space to people who, I mean, even with the university, we're a place-based institution, but what we're finding we're really missing from the digital working is actually coming together and having team away days, creating ideas, collaboration together. And I think some of those spaces to be flexible use that we could see other groups being able to use as well. So I think there's a discussion really about how we can best use the space that we currently have, and also space that may come forward through some of the very exciting investment into the town centre, about how we can make sure that's really benefiting local groups on the ground too. But welcome contributions from other panel members on that too. It's not just, unfortunately, it's not something the university solely can tackle, but I think we need to do that definitely in collaboration.
Yeah, great. I'm gonna move to another question, and this is one to Duncan. What kind of developers are you looking to attract to Kingston Town Centre? And anyone else can kind of, everyone's been involved in the vision for Kingston Town Centre. So can you say something about that, Duncan?
Yeah, I mean, I'd hope from what's been said, everyone will agree Kingston has a high quality environment. We've got a river, we've got really important heritage assets. So I suppose directly answering to the question, we would want a developer that shares our values around protecting and enhancing those assets, making the town and the borough and even broader, more regionally and nationally, a sustainable place going forward. I think we as a borough have declared a climate emergency and set ourselves quite ambitious targets. So we really need to understand that when developers do come and partner with us in borough to build new homes and places and workplaces and community facilities, is that they share that quality and that vision and that commitment to sustainability. And we are seeing that. That's just not sort of an aspiration. I think some of the development that's come is under construction now, is beginning to show that quality around the Royal Exchange. The council's partner in Countryside at the Cambridge Road Estate, which is our biggest regeneration project in 50 years. The last one was when we built the Cambridge Road Estate. And again, we've set some quite high standards for them to achieve, and that was the sort of condition of our partnership with them. So we will see really high performance homes in terms of energy. We will see sustainable environments. So I suppose that's the answer. I don't think we should accept anything less, and I will certainly lean on our planners if we are. So I think more lately we have actually set that out at a smaller scale. So it's not just about development in the big scale. We've set out what we're sort of badging at the moment as a sort of small sites design toolkit, and this is for any developer, however small, on small plots of land across the borough, and setting out really clear guidance around design and quality and space standards. So we as a borough and a local planning authority is trying to be very specific around what we expect to come forward in the future. So yeah, I hope that sort of gives some assurance to that question.
I think it probably gives some assurance, and also for any developer wishing to come into invest in Kingston, Duncan set that out very nicely for you. That's what we expect.
I don't think we have any issue with that, to be fair, at London Square. I guess that's why we've built our reputation has been built on building the quality developments. At the end of the day, anyone who was look us up will see what we've produced in the last 11 years is usually of the sort of highest possible design quality, and it's one of those sort of ethoses we had from when we started the business. That development's always quite a tough process, because obviously it's change, and people don't like change. But if you can demonstrate to people you do it, you're really taking care and you're really providing a beautiful building to replace what's there at the moment, or in an area that's not been developed for a while, then you've got a little bit more chance of bringing them on board. But I think we understand as a developer, that we turn up and we come into a borough. There's a lot of people are always inherently a bit nervous. So we've taken this on board. We have a social value manager in London Square nowadays, which is quite a new concept for developers. I think it's something that in other industries, ESG and social value has been like top and centre for quite a while, but certainly in the building sector and development sector, we're a little bit more of a dinosaur in that respect. And I think we're now a lot of we're really beginning to understand and invest that kind of part of the sector. And that's the kind of stuff we'd happily have a chat with Duncan about, and obviously Kirstin on the Kingston First side. There's parts of the town centre which we're looking at now, which are clearly where we should be able to do some good.
Great, thank you. I'm going to move to another question from Bob Eden, and I'm going to paraphrase it. So, Bob, I hope I'm not doing you an injustice here, but his question is around what differentiates, say, Kingston town centre, from any other town centre. In terms of where we're moving forward. So he as a user would want to be able to go, I'm going to go to this town centre because it offers me this. How do we, in what we do in, either regenerating or, capitalising on stuff and all the work that you've set out, how do we make sure that we're not just creating something which you can find in any other place? Anyone like to kind of comment on that? Kirstin,
I'm happy to. Yeah, I'm happy to give this one a go, and it's a really interesting question. I think I'd start by saying we are a really different town centre from the outset. We've got an incredible mix of assets, to use quite a hard term, but we've touched on the magnificent riverside that we know we can make more of, both as a community asset, as something that can attract people to the town centre, and also accommodate potentially homes, potentially more kind of business use and workspace. We've got great history and heritage, incomparable in many respects to other town centres, outer London town centres as well. I think we've got a brilliant mix of businesses, and yes, they are evolving and changing. And I think part of our job is to make sure that we support those sectors that really need the support and keep them flourishing in the town centre, but are very open-minded and welcoming to different ways of working and different businesses that might want to come into Kingston. And I guess what I'm starting to touch on now is it's about how we do things as well. So we have got a unique partnership, I would argue, in the town centre, where we've got people like the university sitting around the table wanting to play a really instrumental part in how the town does change and evolve. And I would suggest, and I'd hope that would be able to continue and ensure that the town has good stewardship as we go through, what could be quite tricky times, albeit we've got a very exciting future with the potential for the town to transform in a way that continues to respect and promote and look after its heritage and its green spaces and the river and the fantastic business mix that we've got.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that, Kirstin. I'm going to read out what I think is just a comment, a very, very helpful comment from Alex Hughes' contribution. And she agrees that it's vital that there are places in Kingston that people who are working from home can meet and work, relax, and feel part of the community that they've lacked for a while. Kingston offers so much already. There you go, Kirsten, she agrees with you. And we are lucky to have a great university. Nod to you, Jen. Given with green spaces, and the river as part of this. Out of this, new spaces and facilities and the drive that Unilever and Lidl will bring, we must include the outer borough areas, so they are included too. And think about services that people who have hybrid working can use in Kingston. So essentially, if people are working near home or at home, they're going to be coming in to have their lunch or use ancillary services that are offered elsewhere. I'm going to ask if the panel agree with that. I'm pretty sure you're going to say yes, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you all agree? Okay, then they're nodding there, Alex. I'm sure you can see them. So we all agree with you. Very, very good point. And talking about riverside spaces and new facilities, someone has asked a question about, assuming that ordinary people, what does the word public realm mean to ordinary people? And assuming there are ordinary people watching this, what does it mean? Duncan, you're a planner. I'm going to start with you.
Well, it's an interesting question. Well, I do believe sometimes the terminology in the sector can be it can be confusing for the general public to understand what we mean, and we do need to create a common language around areas we are looking at to develop in terms of the riverside. I think our strategy for what we call the missing link on Kingston Riverside, so the area between Kingston Bridge all the way to Canberra Gardens, we just launched, with our partners, a open design competition.
As Duncan's internet let him down again. Can I ask you, Mark, perhaps to give your definition of what public realm is and how important is it in all of this?
Well, I think public realm is something that people are comfortable in using at the end of the day, and people are, want to go to and actually, avail themselves of. It should be, they shouldn't feel excluded from it. It should be a place where they feel, that they can walk to, they can meet friends there, and they can feel comfortable and safe. I think that's important. And to be fair, obviously Duncan was just mentioned the riverside. I think that's exactly, there's a challenge there. It's near the site we're working on, and it's next to the John Lewis, and it's along by Turk's Boatyard, and that whole area. It's a little bit of a disconnect from the town centre at the moment because it's just on the other side of the bridge. And hopefully between us all, we can come up with something that can be really innovative down there and really make it a very nice place to go.
Thank you, Duncan. Your internet let you down there a little bit, so I switched to Mark. Can I just say that I think that during the pandemic, what it's shown us is that we really appreciate outside space and facilities, and that's what we're talking about, aren't we, with public realm? So it's kind of, if you're a member of the public that is not involved in our industry, it's the stuff that you enjoy outside your home, essentially. Can we move? I'm going to move to another question. Let's just see what's come through. Okay, no more questions from the members of the public just yet.
Claudette, if you could still hear me, I'd have
to. Yes, I can't hear you, Duncan.
Yeah, apologies, everyone. I just wanted to mention from the previous question before that around the other neighbourhoods aren't forgotten. And I did want to say that they're very much the focus of the recovery effort across the borough. And the council has launched back in March a recovery grant programme, which was a call out to community groups across those other neighbourhoods. And we've seen a real rich response of ideas. And we've taken some of those forward for funding now, particularly in places like New Malden and Tolworth, where there's some very bespoke and unique sort of responses to those localities. One being pop-ups around Tolworth Station, quite harsh environments on the A3 that need to be mitigated. So we aren't wholly sort of, as a borough, Kingston Town Centre centric. We are looking at the other neighbourhoods, the launch of a new public square in New Malden, and we're not going to get it right every time. So we're experimenting with the community. We're asking for their ideas, putting them into practice, monitoring them, adjusting them. So we're trying to create unique responses to those localities because we recognise the diversity of all our high streets and centres, and that's been the great thing around the pandemic, is people really getting to know their neighbourhoods, and they're demanding better, and it's on their doorstep. They use it every day, and that's really interesting for us because Kingston has traditionally been, I don't like using this phrase, but a sort of a commuter and dormitory borough where a lot of our population did pre-pandemic into town. So now we're trying to capture that user experience and that local experience and that spend as well, which is an enormous sort of asset to tap into. If we can get 10% of that, and sort of someone's £25 lunch in Canary Wharf is spent in Kingston every day, we'd be very happy. So yeah, that was just response to one of your previous questions, and I hope that all came through clear.
Yeah, thank you. We have got a couple more questions from our audience. One, Duncan, I think you have really talked about this, but someone who's anonymous would like to know a bit more about the plans for the Guildhall complex. Are you able to answer that, Duncan?
I can answer it, of course. I mean, the council has, and it's not any sort of secret, has announced its plans for the Guildhall complex and the Kingfisher Leisure Centre sites. At the moment, and there was a committee in May which is a public report that explains the strategy for how the council is seeking to take that forward. The Kingfisher Leisure site is probably more progressed, and we have committed to a brand new sort of 21st century leisure facility there, which will be more than that. Actually, it will be a community hub. It will have other offerings, and will likely be a mixed-use development. The Guildhall, I would say, is less developed, but it has some specific ideas around exploring new uses on the site, and that's a little bit behind around how developed the plans are, but they will start to become more forthcoming over the next 6 to 12 months. And the council has already launched a sort of first stage consultation on some of those development plans, and will continue to talk with the community. But as I say from the outset, the approach is heritage-led. This is our sort of our jewel in the crown, and we really need to make sure whatever place we create in the future is deserving of future generations. And I suppose just on that, I believe all of us it's relying on all of us as custodians of place to ensure that is enabled in the future, whichever role or organisation we come from.
Thank you. And then I think we've got time for one more question before I kind of ask you a specific question which to close our discussion as we move rapidly towards 3 o'clock. Annie Pang says the ability to walk along the river but escape by bus relatively easy is attractive for visiting Kingston. Similarly with the town centre. Hope you will continue to provide accessible public transport links to serve everyone, especially the less mobile. And particularly on that last point about the less mobile, what is there available? So everyone is equally accessible to all. Does Kirsten or Duncan want to comment on that?
Yeah, I'd like to pick up the broader point, I think, Claudette, which is about making sure that the town centre is accessible through all sorts of modes of transport. And I think that is going to be important. And of course, we are part of a London picture on this as we start to think about how public transport is used across the capital, and that, the way that people work and the way that people need to get into and around their town centres and the city centre, and how that has an impact on public transport infrastructure, I think is going to be watched very keenly by all of us, because we all want to make sure that places can be accessed in the most sustainable way. So I think that's something that we'll all have to keep a close eye on and make sure that we continue to promote and protect as we go through this period of adjustment where there could be substantial changes in how people use public transport, particularly in the near future. Just a point just to kind of bridge off Duncan's discussion around public realm as well. I think it's really interesting that We're hearing reports from a lot of businesses around, more people are walking more often into the town centre and cycling more often into the town centre than they have done before. And it's quite significant, actually, the uplift in footfall, particularly along the riverside, because it's an attraction in itself. I think it's really interesting that, some of the infrastructure that has been put into the town centre, particularly along the riverside up towards the Queen's Promenade, has helped that. But we mustn't rest on our laurels, and to kind of Mark's point and Duncan's point, we've got to be thinking about all of the sort of the forgotten bits of the town centre and uplifting those to make sure that people feel that they can access parts of the town centre that might feel difficult or unsafe or more tricky to get around. So whether it's by foot, by car, by bus, by train, I think it's very much on our minds. How do we keep making sure Kingston is accessible?
Thank you. And I'm going to allow this last question that's come in as you were talking, Kirsten, about seething wells. So talking about areas outside the town centre that could provide an excellent public realm. Is there any prospect of moving something positive forward on the seething wells filter beds by the Thames in Surbiton? Who knows about this? Anyone volunteering?
I'm aware of it from a development point of view. I'm aware of it from a development point of view because obviously it's had a number of development applications over the years for redevelopments of quite, at the time, fairly innovative kind of housing and marina, etc., etc. But I have to say, from a pure developer's viewpoint, it's an incredibly challenging site to take on. I'd be interested to see what Duncan's view is of that site, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a specific from the council. I know in recent months there has been some planning sort of regulations that have been updated on the site to help sort of protect its future, and there's a lot of interest from the community around that, and the council is very involved in how that's brought forward. But it's a very, very challenging site, and I think it's one I would like to see move forward in some shape or form. Yes, there has been quite ambitious development plans for it in the past, and I suppose what it highlights to me is again back to that point around how people are really valuing their local doorsteps and their local areas. And I was on the river just last week, and I've never seen it more busy. I was on one of the Turks boats with the family, and it's a bit of an eyesore when you go past it, and you think this crying out for some real transformational intervention there, and we know how valuable they are as natural habitats as well. So yeah, that's sort of my view, but I can't sort of give the official council view. But I think I know colleagues across the council are working closely with the local community on moving it forward.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you to the audience for listening and for those who've posed questions. That draws our discussion to a close, and thank you very much, panelists. I'm now going to hand back over to Callum to draw this session formally to a close. Thank you, Callum.
Thank you, Claudette, and thank you to our panel this afternoon as well. It was a fantastic conversation to hear about everything that's going on in Kingston and its very bright future. Looking ahead, we do still have 2 sessions taking place today, details which are appearing on your screen right now. We have 100 online, which is supported by REBA, which is taking place until 6 p.m. But right now at 3 o'clock, we have a session in partnership with Merchant Land where we ask, what impact will the latest planning reforms have on developers in London? You can book onto those sessions by visiting our programme page on our website. That link again is www.realestatelive.co.uk. Thank you once again for joining us this afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you again either later today or later on this week. Thank you and goodbye.